So lower your expectations. If this is really boring, you won't be surprised. If it's not, it'll be, okay, it's better than I thought. So I'm going to take a few minutes and just tell you what I've done over the years, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I think makes people or situations or businesses successful. I was an immigrant, came to Canada when I was 12 years old, didn't speak English, and at the time we moved to a farm, and there was a one-room school with one teacher and 8 grades. and I was 12 years old, and they put me back with the grade 1 kids, and they gave me a Sears catalog and said, here's how you're going to learn to speak English. You look at the picture and you see what the word says. So I'd look at a picture that said shoes, and that's how I learned to speak English. I was a terrible student in high school, barely passed. In fact, your Mr. Van Beek was the first one in our family ever to go to university. So I had a terrible every one of my report cards said, Keith could be a very good student if he'd just simply try. I didn't try. So my high school counselor said, well, you know, you're good at math. If you're really lucky, you might get a job as a bank teller. You should try to do that. And I applied at all the banks, and they didn't want me. So at the time, I was a soccer player. I played a little professional soccer. So I had to have Saturdays off. So I started to work at Zellers because they agreed that I didn't have to work on Saturdays. So I kicked around Zellers for a few years on their training program, which is really you do all the dirty jobs. And about a few years in, I thought, you know, I think I can be successful at this. You know, I'm just as smart as any of these other people. And I figured out how to get to be successful. And I'll talk to you about that a little later. And 8 years later, I was vice president of the company, in charge of sales, marketing, merchandising. So it wasn't just because I figured it out. I got lucky along the way a few times. I did some things right, did some things wrong. But I figured out how to get to be successful. So then, when I was vice president of Zellers, they hired this really smart guy to come and talk to all the young executives, and I was one of those. And he said to me, well, you know, you're going to go a long way. We're going to make you senior vice president at Zellers, but you're never going to be the president because you don't know anything about finance. And that was true. I didn't know anything about finance. At one time, by the way, I ran all of the Maritimes for Zellers, all the Zeller stores. And there were 2 in St. John, one just down the street here. Anyway, so I decided that if they weren't going to make me president, and to be honest, I didn't think I would be president because there were guys a lot smarter than me in that company. But when they told me I couldn't be the president, that kind of pulled the trigger. So I bought a company. I bought a company for $1 in cash and $102 million in debt. And you say, how do you do that? Well, it was a bankrupt company. And it gets a little technical, but I bought this bankrupt company called McLeod Stedman. Remember Stedman stores? They're still around, some of them. And McLeod stores were in Western Canada, and they were hardware stores. And there were 500 of them, and they were franchised. And they were in trouble. They were going bankrupt. So I bought the company, paid $1 in cash, borrowed $102 million, some of it from the bank, some of it from note holders, some of it from other people. And about 2 weeks after I did that, the bank decided they should call the line. Well, I didn't really have $102 million, so.
What does that mean, call the line?
They called the loan in. I owed the bank, of the 102, 30 million of it was owed to a bank. And right after I bought it, because they wanted to get the owners off the hook. The owners at the time, by the way, was a company called Onyx, which just bought WestJet. And so I bought the company, and the bank decided that they wouldn't shut it down when he owned it, but they'd shut it down when I owned it, which is a little difficult for me. So I found this lawyer, and we sued the bank for bad faith lending because they called the loan after 2 weeks. We sued the bank, and they said, okay, well, we'll keep it going for 3 months. So during the 3 months, I ran all the assets of the company down, so we had no assets. Then the bank couldn't call the line because if they did, there'd be nothing in it for them, and they'd lose their $30 million, and that kept the company going for 5 years while I fixed it and then sold it.
So, sorry, you just kept jerking the bank around to keep them in the game, to keep
Yes.
the company going.
Yeah. They couldn't shut it down because they would lose money. And so as long as I made sure the bank lost money, they weren't going to shut it down. How I fixed it, by the way, is there's a law in Canada called CCAA, which you probably have never heard of, but it's the Canadian Creditors Arrangement Act. And it was only used once in 1945 when a Japanese company owned a bank in British Columbia. And in 1945, when they interred the Japanese people, the bank couldn't do anything because the owners were locked up. And so they created this law called the Canadian Creditors Arrangement Act in 1945 to take that company into bankruptcy and back out so that the bank could be run. It wasn't run again until one of my lawyers found it when I owned McLeod Stedman. So the second time in Canada it was run in 1989. And essentially what it does, there's a Bankruptcy Act in Canada, but prior to that, you either were bankrupt or you were not. Now, this CCAA allows you to be bankrupt and work your way out. So we found that law and we used that. And essentially what you do is you go to the bank and you say, listen, we're either going to shut this down and you're going to lose, say, $15 million, or you're going to agree with me and you'll get $20 million because the company will keep going and we'll give you $20 million. You go to your other creditors, and you, like suppliers, people that sent you merchandise, and you say, look, if we shut down, you get nothing. But if you keep us going, we'll give you shares in the company and we'll give you some money. So that's what we did. Then we sold the company. So that was that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about questions and finance, and remember that story. So just as I was selling that company, I got this call from a headhunter and said, listen, how'd you like to work for Toys R Us? And I said, well, where are they located? And they said, well, New Jersey. I said, I don't think so. So to make a long story short, they said, well, you tell us what you want to come join us. This was in January. And if we can agree to it, then, fine. So I sent them a note. At the time it was fax machine, the Gestetners. Here's what I want. And they said, okay. So I called them back by phone and I said, well, this is really great, but you haven't said what I'd be doing. And the guy that I was going to be working for said, well, he said, I don't know anything about retail, and they just made me senior vice president, and you know everything about retail, so just get here and we'll figure it out. This is in January. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, I've been working 5 years to fix this bankrupt company, and I'm kind of burned out. So if you're willing to wait till July, I'll join you. If you're not, I understand, that's okay. So okay. So I had the next 6 months off, which was great because I did need to regenerate, and joined Toys R Us. And this would be in 1990. So my first job was, we had these businesses all around the world, and I was sent for a month to each country. So I went to South Africa and all over Europe and Asia, looking at each of these businesses and writing a report on this is what's good, this is what's bad, this is what's need to be done. So the first thing that happened was the European business was in trouble. And to my German friend over here, I had to learn to speak German because they were going to put me in Germany to run the European division, and it was based out of Germany. Berlin? No, in Cologne. So I learned to speak German, but we found a better manager, and he went in there. So my job was create a franchise division. So I had a briefcase and applications, like hundreds and hundreds of applications from countries and companies and people that wanted to have a franchise of Toys R Us. So I built this franchise department, and we had stores all in Middle East, Australia, South Africa, France, Spain. Anyway, shortly after that, the manager, the president of the Canadian operation, resigned. And they said, well, can you run Canada and international as well? And I said, oh, we'll see, I'll try it. So I started to run the Canadian operation. I'm telling you this because Toys R Us is in big trouble, as you know. It's bankrupt in the United States, it's gone. There's still some stores in Canada, but we'll see what happens to them. So I joined Toys R Us in New Jersey. And my job was to run the Canadian operation, which I did for a year. And at the end of that year, I went to New York, where headquarters was, and said, listen, you know, this business model is broken. It doesn't work anymore. And they said, well, why not? And I said, well, so I explained to them what I thought and why it wasn't working. So they said, well, I convinced them. I said, why don't you let me play with the Canadian operation? There's only 65 stores. We've got 800 stores worldwide. If it helps, great. If it doesn't help, nobody will notice because it's a public company. So I fixed the Canadian operation, changed everything. And so now I'm the golden-haired boy, and they say, well, come on down to the United States and do the same thing. This is a little longer interval because it's going to explain to you what happened to Toys R Us. So I didn't really want to go to Toys R Us in the United States because I didn't think they really wanted to change. They had a president or a chief executive officer there who had been there for 25 years and had made probably $40–50 million in stock options. And he didn't really want to change. And yes?
Just I thought I'd point out that most of our class has a stock portfolio in a simulator. And so we've been studying a little bit about the stock market, so it's relevant.
Okay. So we didn't think he wanted to change. So I refused the offer a few times. I said, no, I'm quite happy here in Canada, just leave me alone. And they kept coming back. So they hired a new guy to be the chief operating officer. And both of us would be reporting to this guy. So he and I met in a hotel room in New York. And he looked like me, he sounded like me, and we did work together, and people would mistake us for each other. And he said, look, I don't know if I want to go either. And I said, yeah, I don't think they really want to change, and I think they just need a couple of guinea pigs to make the board of directors happy that, you know, look, we tried to make a change and it didn't work. So God bless him, because he said, well, here's what we're going to do. He said, we're going to write a separation agreement. That means that when you leave a company, here's what they have to give you, if it's not for cause, right? So he wrote this wonderful separation agreement that said, here's what we're going to do for the next year, and if you guys follow along with what we want to do, fine, we'll just stay and we'll do it. But if you say, no, we don't want to do that, then we'll both leave, and here's what you have to give us. And they signed that. So he and I went to New York. And we worked on Toys R Us International and USA, which was losing money every year, by the way, and tried to fix it. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. So we both left. And that was kind of the biggest break of my life, because they paid us full salary, everything, for 3 years, and cars and health benefits. And that allowed me to start a consulting company. And I didn't have to worry about, did I have a client tomorrow so I could pay my bills, because I was still getting paid. So my consulting company turned into family businesses that were in trouble or needed help or needed redirection. My biggest client was in the Middle East, and I lived there for a while. My client had 55 different businesses, and I was the chief operating officer for him for about a year and a half. And we had everything from banks to watch companies to retail, construction, you name it. One of the wealthiest guys in the Middle East, in Dubai. And that was sort of my chief client for a long time. And I also did work for Roots and Danier Leather, and if any of you guys know that, 9 West, the shoe stores. And so having worked with all of these different companies, you learn a lot about what makes them work and what makes them tick. And even though, if you don't know, like a watch company, we had a watch company when I was in Dubai that manufactured in Hong Kong and Geneva and sold watches in various places. And you learn about what happens and how people become entrepreneurs. I got to tell you about this little company. So I'm working in Dubai, and we have all these companies, and I come across this little company that's based in Singapore. And it's the so-and-so trading company. And I go and ask, well, what does this guy do? Well, we don't know. We've never been there. He used to work here, and he went there, and he started a business for us, and we funded him. I said, yeah, but it makes good money. It was making like $700,000 to $800,000 a year after we paid him. What does he do? Well, we don't know. So I'm in Singapore on another piece of business, and I thought, I got to go see this guy, because it was a one-man band. And I go find his office in this office building, and he's got a little cubicle like people have out here in their, rent your cubicle space. and a
Right beside us.
yeah, and a secretary. Like the space is a third the size of this room. So I sit down with him. He's the nicest guy. He's originally from India. And I said, well, tell me about your business. And what he did, he bought Mont Blanc pens from various places around the world and sold them online in the United States and made about $1 million profit a year. And after he paid rent and taxes and himself and his secretary, he was grossing $600-700. That's all he did. And it's like, and I'm working my ass off here, you know. Like, how stupid am I? You know? Yeah. So anyway, I had this consulting company which I did a lot of work for companies, and as I say, a lot of them were family businesses that were in trouble or didn't want to be fixed or whatever. And kind of wound the business down over the last bunch of years, so that I don't do anything now except enjoy myself, play a little golf and tennis. So that's the history of it. So let me tell you about, I wrote it down because I'm going to forget, but some of the things I learned along the way. I learned you should put stuff where you can find it. Oh yeah, I'm going to talk to you about people first. I found along the way that you got to work and hire people that are smarter than you are. That's a scary thing. If you own a business or if you're a president or a manager, you got to hire people that are smarter than you are. And that's scary. You got to have the confidence to do it. You got to let your ego go out the door. Because if you hire somebody that's smarter than you, you better know how to work with that person. But if you don't, you get in trouble. It's like a hockey team. You got a goalie, you got defensemen, you got forwards. You can't say to the goalie, hey, listen, I'm going to go put on a different uniform, go out there and score some goals. That's not his passion. His passion is being a goalie. So you got to hire people that are smarter than you, that have a passion. And I'm going to explain it to you in a little graph. So there's a president of the company, okay? He's the president. There's only one of him. He's presumably the smartest guy in the room. Let's give him a 10. You got some vice presidents. There's a bunch of those guys, okay? They're not as good as the president, but they're pretty darn good. So you got a VP, and they're 8s, okay? You're trying to be 10s, but they're 8s. Then you got a bunch of directors. They're trying to be VPs. They're not as good as those guys, but they're 6s. And then you got the rest of the employees, and they're 4s. And there's 4s in there that should be 6s and probably will be 8s one day. It might even be the president. But that's the way it is today. So what happens is, one of these VPs has 4 people working for him, okay? And what happens is, the VP is a bit of a softie, and these 4 people, this guy is a 4, this guy's a 4, this guy's a 3, and this guy's a 3 minus, okay? So he's pretty good. But what happens is, because this guy has people that are not up to scratch, he's got to spend some of his time supplementing that 3 and working with that 3 and saying, well, you got to do it this way, and this guy too, okay? So now what happens is, this guy is no longer an 8 because he's got to give 2 of his to the people that are working for him because he doesn't want to get rid of them because they're really nice, right? But he's no longer an 8 now, he's a 6, okay? And what happens is, because he's a 6, this guy now has to supplement him because he hasn't got time to do his job properly because he's over here helping other people do his job. So he's now a 6 or an 8, right? So the next VP is the same situation, and there's one VP that has all 4s. Okay, he's a great teacher, he's a motivator, and he's hired the right people. So that VP is still an 8. You following me? So what happens is, because this guy now is a 6, because he's got to supplement these VPs that he's got, and this guy's an 8, what do you think the 8's thinking? The 8's thinking, hey, I'm better than the 6, and he is. And so what happens is there's a little dissension because the 8 thinks he's better than the 6, right? But the 6 thinks, well, I'm the president. If I had time to, so the whole issue is, you got to hire smarter people that are smarter than you, and that comes to ego, because most people don't have the confidence in their own abilities to say, you know what, I'm going to hire this guy because he's smarter than me and he can help me in my business. You know, a lot of people that run businesses think I'm the owner or I'm the CEO. I should know everything, and you don't. You don't know everything. So that's the people thing. If you have your business, get the right people, and get people. Find out what you sit down and you say, what am I really good at, and what am I not good at? That's a consulting psychologist at Zellers that I told you about. He did that, and he told me. He said, here's what you're really good at. And here's what you should never be good at. You will never be good at. Don't ever try doing this stuff. Just do this stuff.
You remember what he said you would never be good at?
Yeah. So I said to him, well, what do you think I should do? What do you think my career should be? He said, well, I got good news and bad news for you. And I said, oh, okay. I said, what's the good news? He said, I think that whatever you try, whatever you do, you'll be good at it. And I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, well, as soon as you're good at it, you'll want to do something else. So that was the bad news. I'm going to just turn this around. So if you have a...
Your attention span, or what was he saying?
What I should not do?
Or you'd never be good at.
Yeah, I should not be involved in detail follow-up kind of stuff. I should get people to do that for me because I don't have the patience for it. Ask questions. And that goes to ego as well. And when I was telling you about when I bought that bankrupt company, because I never knew anything about finance, well, now I'm running a bankrupt company, which is nothing but finance. You spend your whole time, the business is running, but when you run a bankrupt company, everybody in the world's mad at you. The bank's mad at you because they're not getting their money back. The suppliers that sent you merchandise are mad at you because you're not paying them on time. The stores that you're trying to supply are mad because they're not getting everything. And everybody's mad at you, and you're trying to fix the company. And so I'm spending 3 days a week with lawyers, accountants, the owners of the stocks and bonds that the company has. And I don't know anything about finance. And so some guy would say, oh, well, we have to really worry about the amortization rates on these bonds that are in the retirement fund because that could, and I'm like, whoa. And at first you think, I'm really stupid. I don't know this stuff, and I'm running the company, right? But then you say, yeah, I'm running the damn company, not them. So I'd say, stop. Tell me what that means. Well, what do you mean what that means? What's the amortization rate? What is that? Well, that's the interest that we think these bonds will have over the next few years. Well, how does that affect my pension plan? Well, if you take a bond that's worth $1 million and you say, well, the interest rate is 4% over the next 20 years, or 6%, there's a huge difference between those two numbers 20 years out. And so we think that your accountants have overvalued those bonds. So then you learn. You say, oh, okay, I get that. Well, what do you do about that? Well, you either have to put more money in the pension plan, right? Or you got to reduce the cost that the pension plan is incurring. Otherwise, you could run afoul of the Canadian government, which says that you must have your pension plan fully funded. Oh.
Like Sears.
Okay, so I'll move on. So ask questions. Don't be afraid. And people think, well, they'll think I'm stupid. No, you ask a good question, they'll think you're smart, because people need to understand what. You can't just let things float over your head and say, well, I'll figure that out later, because you generally don't. So ask a lot of questions. In all of your programs and your ideas, being better or different. What do I mean by that? You look at something and you say, okay, this is my plan. Somebody had a music blog, no?
Yeah, he's not in here.
He's not here, okay.
And while you pause for, let me just make sure your thing's still working.
Yeah.
I've had some technical difficulties lately.
And what I wasn't worth listening to.
You're good.
Okay. Let me think of, let's take your idea of the lawn care business. You know, one of the things you want to think about is, what does this business look like 10 years from now? Like, how is it going to be different? And how can I be first? How can I be the market leader in something, as opposed to, you know, I saw a guy doing that, looks like a good business, maybe I'll try that. No, he's already doing that, you know? And you're going to be number 2 at best. You got to be number 1 at something. So one of the things you want to do is how do you do it better? How do you do it different? You know? I learned that lesson when I was working for Zellers. I was a young guy. I'd been there a couple of years, and I was running a department in a Zeller store in Peterborough. And the district manager came around, and he's like the big guy that determines are these kids going to get promotions. And so I had this department, happened to be the ladies' lingerie department. So he takes this book, which had all the items listed in it and the prices and all that kind of thing. And he takes the book and he opens it up and he says, "Oh, I see a problem here. Van Beek, go find it." So I'm like, "No, I fixed this thing perfect. I knew you were coming. There is no problem here." He says, "Yeah, there is. Find it." So I'm looking, and you know, everything is perfect. The little signs are up, and merchandise is nicely displayed. And I'm looking, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. And finally, I find by accident that somebody has actually taken one of the garments and put it in the next little thingy, which was for large, and that was a medium. So I move it back. He says, "Well done." So how did you know it was there? You weren't even close to it. He said, "I didn't, but there's always something you can do better." And so he just made me look till I found something. And you know, that's a great lesson. Like, what can you do better? Step back from your idea. Like, what's the next generation look like? You know, what can I do that puts me apart from everybody else that's trying to do the same thing? Because as many ideas as you have, there are other people doing the same thing. You know, there are people writing apps, hundreds a day get submitted. So how does your idea work better than somebody else's? And if everybody's doing the same thing, what's the next generation of that look like? You know, or the one after that, what does it look like? Do you have a tennis ball? We'll do the tennis thing.
Sorry, I left it in the other room.
Yeah, get a tennis ball while I talk about listening. One of the biggest pluses that I learned over the time that I ran businesses was you got to listen to people. And when you have a conversation with somebody, most of us do this, by the way, you say something, while they're answering, you're creating the reply to their answer. You're already thinking about something else. And you're not really listening. You're hearing what they're saying, but you're not really listening, which is fine if you're talking about, are you going to Tim Hortons later? But it's not fine in business. And if you learn how to listen to people, you will learn more than you can possibly imagine. And I'm going to give you an exercise that you're going to do sometime, or not, doesn't matter, that's going to shock you. You get in a room, and you phone somebody that you love or that's important to you, okay? And you turn the lights off, and you turn on your computer off, and you just sit there in the dark and call that person. And talk to that person for 5 minutes without any distraction, totally focused on that conversation, okay? Doesn't matter who it is, your mother, your boyfriend, your Uncle Ted. But if you do that, I guarantee you that within 2 or 3 days, that person will call you back and say, "What's going on? Something different here." And it's shocking because we all do the same thing. How many times you make a phone call and by the time it rings, you forget who you called? You know, you're waiting for them to answer so you know who you're talking to. It's shocking. So learn to listen to people. It's so important. When I go into fixed businesses, what I do is I say to the owners of the business, "Listen, I'm going to be in your office for 3 days before I come and talk to you." what are you going to do for 3 days in my office? I'm going to talk to everybody. And I talked to the janitor, to the secretaries, to the senior executives. I might only spend 15 minutes with the janitor, but I'll spend 2 hours with somebody else. By the time I'm done talking to everybody in the company, I could fix that company in an hour. Because I know exactly what's going on, because the people, I listen to the people, and when you sit down at first, they don't want to talk to you. It's just another guy, and you know. But if they can see that you're actually interested in what they have to say, they'll tell you everything. They tell you everything that's wrong with that company from everybody's perspective. And after a while, you get like, oh, all right. So it's the marketing, and it's to this, and it's to that. So, well, how do we fix that? So listening is just a key skill. Just so to break it up a little bit, I'm going to show you a little exercise on how to do things better. So come on out here, stand in a little circle right here. And because you're from Germany, you have more experience with the ball. You get in the middle. Little circle. So here's the exercise, okay? Over here first. I'm going to give Floris this ball, okay? And the exercise is this. No one person can touch it twice in a row. Who's got a watch? Do you have a watch, Stacey? All right, we're going to do 20 seconds, okay? No one person can touch this ball twice in a row, so you can't do this, right? So how many times can a person touch this ball in 20 seconds? Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 29. 29 people touch this ball. So, so let me ask you this. We're gonna do this another way. What do you think is the maximum number of people can touch this ball in 20 seconds? 40?
60.
60. Anybody else?
That was like 29. But yeah, I guess we should.
We were all going leisurely then, right? Yeah. You can go pretty quick and you can easily double that.
Yeah?
Can you can 10 people touch it at once?
No, one at a time.
Thinking.
So we got 60. 60 is what we can do?
Yeah.
All right, here I'm going to tell you. I think we can get it to 500. Okay? In 20 seconds. Now, I might be crazy, but I think we can. So is there a better way to do this than just passing it from one to the next?
We could all come in closer and touch it.
Try that.
Move in, guys.
Yeah.
So
Just touch it.
Wait, I got to get Stacy to start.
Yeah,
Ready?
one at a time.
One at a time.
Ready,
Like,
go.
can you hold it?
1,
2, 3, 4,
That's two
5,
people
6,
at a time.
7, 8.
Yeah.
Oh wait, what?
9, 10.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 40, 41, 42, 8, 9, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Stop.
8.
58. All right. We doubled the output, right?
How did you go from 20 to 40?
Yeah.
Yeah, he went 20 and then 20 again.
Oh, yeah.
So we doubled it. All right. Is there a better way to do that?
I don't know. Just go quicker?
Yeah.
Let's just spin around in
Everyone
circles.
just put their hands like this and they just put the ball like up and down.
Well, try that.
No, everyone put their hands like that.
But like a
and
stack.
Then, and then you just hit one at a time.
Oh.
What?
Yeah, but you only get one hand, eh?
And then one
All right.
to back up. I
Okay,
can't.
How
How are you even gonna count
I can't
this?
count that fast. Can someone else do it?
So I'll tell you what.
Oh.
Nobody can touch it because two people can't touch it at the same time.
You can't touch
But
Isn't Jacob
every time you go up and down the ladder, there's going to be what, 12 hands?
Yeah.
Okay. So ready, Stacy?
Yeah.
Here we go.
That one touch each other.
1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So I counted 9 12s. How many
yeah,
did you
that was
got?
9
9?
12s.
So that's 108 people.
Oh.
Is there a better way to do that?
I got an idea.
Is there a better way to do it?
I got an idea. Don't count. Just go up and down as fast and make sure you touch them all. And someone
I can't even.
Or everyone count how many times it touched them, and then we add it all up at the end.
No, there's going to be cheating.
Can we do like a wall with our hands and then you just go up and down?
You can do that.
We can't be
Yeah,
touching
just
each
like
other.
we can't be
slide it,
touching.
still go
Yeah, but like
up,
yeah,
into
like
all
that.
the way.
Like
But it can't be twice in a
I
row.
don't know how.
If
You
you
can't touch the same person twice.
Like,
Yeah.
Like we just gotta put them like all in the same.
I don't think that's gonna work.
that is sick, boys.
So question is, how am I?
Here,
I'll
do them all.
Okay.
No, don't touch us.
I got to see this. How does this
Don't
work?
touch each other.
Okay.
So we just go up and down the ladder, touching hands.
We only one.
Wait, make it a
Like,
straight
this is
line.
not gonna work.
Yeah, I know,
boys.
like you two.
Are you not supposed
Okay,
to
so
touch
how many
hands?
hands?
Okay,
One, two,
ready?
three, four.
No,
No.
not yet.
One,
I
two,
only
three,
supposed to
four,
have one
five,
hand.
six,
Wait, can we
seven,
have both
eight,
of our
nine.
hands?
No,
No,
one hand.
one.
One, two,
touching
three,
you.
four, five, six,
No,
seven,
well,
eight,
not
nine, 10, 11,
This
12.
is
All right.
perfect.
This is not a straight line.
Yeah,
I know, we
Yeah.
gotta make it a straight line.
Okay.
How about we go like this?
Everyone kneel down.
Yes,
Yeah.
please do
Oh,
this.
oh,
Please
oh.
do this, guys.
No,
Just
no,
stay
no,
in
like
line.
a line like this.
Just stay in
Yeah,
line.
just
around like this and just put in a circle and just go like that.
Okay.
Doesn't that make more sense than trying to go up?
Yeah.
boys?
Yeah.
Come on.
Jesus Christ.
Can we create like a round shape?
Just literally
Yeah.
just
like
go
that?
like,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, but we gotta make it like a circle.
Why don't we make it? Okay.
Is this everyone?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yes.
But we can't touch each other.
Ready?
touching each other.
Ready and go.
Who's counting? Count how many
Ah.
times he goes.
No, this is bad.
I'm counting.
You're counting.
Oh my lord, this is hard.
What's with your face?
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know.
Stop.
Yeah, that was actually less than the last
I
one.
know it's last. I don't know.
Ready to feed someone.
Is there a better way to do it?
There's gotta be.
There's got to be a better way.
That's what I like to hear. There's got to be a better way.
And you're never
Wait,
number one.
does it have to be your hand?
No, it just can't tell you. It can be your head. I don't care.
Right in a line. Stay in a line. Run up and down the line.
No, just tap everybody.
All right, we're doing suicides.
No, you're doing this. We're all just standing on it. That's not a bad idea. No.
It's like the beat test or whatever.
Well, everyone can get closer to me. I can just start spinning.
Yeah.
We already did this, didn't we?
Wait, one hand.
Yeah, but not one hand. One hand.
For who?
Put it out like this. Put it like this and hit it on the way up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like you're
I
like.
am gonna get real dizzy.
That's fine.
Like you're in a
Yeah.
marathon. High five.
We make sacrifices, so everyone like they're about to give me a handshake. Just. Come on, man.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Don't mess a hand and
Yeah, so Force is my marker, the big guy.
Buddy, just start spinning in circles. Just start spinning.
don't mess the
Like,
hand.
let
the V-tech kick in and just start spinning. Don't
Ready?
mess the hand.
Where
Where you start?
Just let me make sure we're good.
Okay.
All right, I'm good.
All right, ready and go.
Oh my god.
2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Stop.
Okay, that's 180.
You still standing?
So what you've done now, you've changed the way you're doing it. So think about the way you just did that, and is there a way that you could go faster?
Well, how do you think you're gonna get to 500? Dude, this is a big jump.
If he says 500, we probably do 500. He's definitely done this before. It's possible.
But that goes to the different part. Maybe you got to do it a little different.
Something that spins.
You've gone from 29 to 180.
Who's gonna push him?
Oh yeah.
No,
Get a leaf blower in the chair and start going.
So we have 10 people, so intervals of 10, so it's even. 2 people are just spinning me. I'm just going. I just have my arm straight up. You gotta tap it. I'm not tapping you. You're tapping me now.
What?
We'll get a spinny chair. There's 2 people spinning me. I just have my arm out.
Never going to work.
He crushes it instantly.
Anytime you're spinning in a chair, yeah.
Okay.
There's gotta be.
Yeah, I mean we can try.
There's 12 of us. Someone has the answer in their brain.
Wait, if he holds the ball, could we all touch it at once and just?
No 2 people can touch it at the same time.
What if we
Yeah,
get a
it's not
helicopter?
ready over there.
What if You just get one person tap it 500 times.
No.
So I did 20 seconds?
It has to be 2 people.
I can click my mouse.
Okay,
probably
here,
9
give me the
times per
ball.
second.
Click
Put it
it
on the
5
ground.
seconds.
Why don't you just put it on the ground? We all just.
Ah,
It's gotta
good
be.
idea.
It's gotta be warm.
But
Yeah, we
it,
can though, but like.
There's
has
a lot
to
of
be-
room for error in that one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
There's
that
a
has
lot of
to
room for
be-
error.
but there's a
Yeah,
grain
yeah.
there. There's a grain there.
You just gotta take it a little.
Okay, let me give you a hint.
Yeah.
What if you didn't use your whole hand?
Oh, yes.
Just tap with their fingers?
Well, what if everybody just put their finger up? Couldn't they get them a lot closer then?
And there's less resistance.
Oh my god, okay.
Everyone.
Oh, okay, I need room.
Hey, yeah, you sit down. We're like, hold the ball. Hold the ball up. We're like E.T.
Yeah.
No, wait, look,
Okay,
look.
ready?
Wait,
Right.
you wanna go?
Closer.
Ready, set, go.
Go.
Yeah,
You guys all can't touch it.
we need it. Can we stop the time?
Whoa.
Alright.
Reset.
You need
So,
to like move.
We'll go in a circle. Everyone touch it. The next person touch it. The next person touch it.
What?
Okay.
No, it's faster if you move the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move the ball.
Just
stop. But just don't go so
Wait,
close.
make a big enough circle.
On your mark.
Are you ready?
Get set,
Yeah, like-
go.
Don't break the fingers. Someone counting?
No, you're gonna. Yeah.
Holy.
Okay, bro. It's my favorite finger.
That's a good finger. Make sure you touch them all.
Yeah. Touch them all.
It's a workout for Jacob.
Stop.
612.
Yes.
Nice.
My arm hurts.
Hey, when you were talking about your early beginnings, you forgot a story that I always like. I think it's particularly valuable for high school students, and it's how they found you for Zellers.
How they wish?
Well, you said the bank didn't want you,
Yeah.
but Zellers did. And you told me a story one time that you had worked on the high school yearbook.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nah, you can save it for later if you want, but
Yeah.
I think it's good for.
So, failure. I know a guy, he's probably started 9 businesses, failed at every one of them. 10th business was successful, he's a multimillionaire. Because he learned. And you'll learn a lot more from failing at something. I'm sure all of you have run little tests in your apps or whatever, and it didn't work. Well, you learn from that. Okay, here's why it didn't work, so here's what I have to do so that it does work. So if you're not failing, you're not learning. Okay, you will fail. We all do. You know, we've all made mistakes. I've run huge businesses, and I've made mistakes and done the wrong thing and failed at something. And what are you going to do? You know? And it's never over. It's never over. I'll tell you my one it's never over moment. So I'm running this bankrupt business, and it's extremely stressful. And Reese and I, by the way, are living together in Newmarket, Ontario. And it's unbelievably stressful because everybody's mad at you. So the bank comes to me and says, okay, listen, we've put up with you for 5 years now. You know, you got to pay us back within the next 24 days or you're gone. I have note holders. These are people that invested in the business and they get a note, a bond that says, okay, we're going to pay you 18% interest for the next 20 years. They're not getting paid. They're upset. And my suppliers are upset. So what happens is I realize I think it's over. I mean, I can't pay these people. I don't know how to pay. I don't have any money to pay these people. And I came up with this idea. And I stayed up all night one day and I said, you know, here's what I'm going to do. So I made an appointment to call the bank, or to see the bank, Bank of Montreal, downtown Toronto, with their $5 million sculptures, and I'm trying to weasel $1 million out of them. And I went to see the bank, set up a meeting with them, and I said, here's what I'd like you to do. Can you get the note holders, because they had a committee, on the line for me? You know, why do you want to do that? I said, I think I need to talk to all of you at the same time. So they get these note holders, which are all over the United States, and they get them on the line. So they put me on video, and I said, okay, well, here's the thing. I said, you know, you guys are very upset, and you're not happy with the way things are going because you're not getting paid. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's the keys to the company. Thank you very much. See you later. And I left. And they're like, oh, wait. So I go back and I said, no, you know, if you guys think you can do this better than I can, then go ahead and do it. Here's the keys to the company. Go run it. By the way, Mr. Banker, you're going to lose about $25 million, and you note holders are going to lose all of your $30 million. And but that's fine. That's the way you want to go. Oh, well, that day, the bank said, okay, fine. Here's some money for you. The note holder said, okay, fine, we'll agree to your restructuring. It's never over till it's over, okay? There's an old saying in finance. If you owe the bank a little bit of money, you got a problem. If you owe them a lot of money, they got a problem, you know? And that's what that was. So it's never over till it's over. There's always another way. Any questions? Yes?
How did you get the bank to loan you that much money in the first place?
Well, I didn't. They loaned the previous company all that money, and when I bought the company, the loan came with it. But the previous company gets a little bit complicated. It was this Onyx company that just bought WestJet. They owned it, and they were going public.
We're supposed to have a lesson on IPOs the last 3 days.
Really?
It's been busy.
Well, I'll give you a quick history of IPOs. So when you go public, you take the companies that you own, you put them together and say, okay, the total value of the company is $2 billion in sales, and the revenue is this. And so let's say that the total revenue is $10 million, total net profit, and you go public at a multiple of earnings generally. So if you're earning $10 million a year and you go multiple of 12, then your IPO is worth $120 million. With me? So Onyx owns these companies. Amongst them is this one that I bought, this McLeod Stedman Inc. Well, that company was going to lose $40 million, which I had engineered because that's what it was going to cost to fix it. So if they have this company in their portfolio when they go public, the 40 million translates to 400 million because they're going at 10 times earnings, and that draws the earnings down by 40 million. So they have to get rid of this company. And that's why I was able to buy it for $1 because they had to get rid of it. And so the $30 million came from what they had already arranged before that from Bank of Montreal.
Why did Zellers reach out to you to see if you wanted to be a trainee?
Oh, I was in high school, and I was terrible at studies, but I was good at other stuff. So they made me head of the yearbook. And I did a bunch of things that were unusual, and the yearbook became a big success. And there was a little story in the newspaper. And the guy at Zellers read the story in the newspaper and said, hey, why don't you come work for us? So I did. And it was a good thing, actually. I learned a lot.
There's a lot of people in here who are doing really neat things, and a lot of people in our previous classes have leveraged those unusual things into jobs. And I think the lesson that I like from that story is that there's another quote, I forget the exact if anybody knows, but it's go as you would be as you dream or something. And so even though you're doing something menial today, like a worksheet or an interview for a mentor that you're not sure if they're going to help you, conduct it with your A game, conduct it at your very best, because you don't know what that could lead to.
You never know. When I do corporate seminars, one of the exercises I do is I get all the people in the room, and it's you're stranded in the Arctic, your plane has crashed, and we're going to do a group exercise on how to get out, okay? And it's the most wonderful thing, because what happens almost every time, the guy who's running the company and the most senior guys are the worst. Oh, well, let's just walk out of here. Well, wait, you're in the Arctic. Where are you walking to? You know? And the people that are the smartest are the secretaries, you know, the people in the trenches, because they're not used to making rash decisions. They're used to thinking it through. Like, what do I do now? And it's the most interesting thing and so what happens is, if it goes back to your listening, if you listen to people in the trenches and the people that are around you and their ideas and just say, hey, listen, what do you think of this? And one of the things that made me successful when I was running companies was simply that. I would bring in a whole room for sometimes 100 people, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do, okay? Let me give you an example. When I was running Toys R Us Canada, the big deal was dollar stores. Like, dollar stores were exploding all over the place. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if at the front of each Toys R Us store, we could have like this $1, $2, $3. For the parent that comes in, she just wants to spend $3 because her kid's going to a party, you know, and we would like emulate a dollar store. So I thought, okay, I get all the people that work in the company in the headquarters, okay, 100 people in the room, and I'd say, you know what, I'm trying to think of some ideas that make sales better. Who's got an idea? And, you know, all these different ideas, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting for somebody to say, you know, the dollar stores are doing great. Oh yeah, they are, aren't they? Well, how could we do that? Well, and then somebody would say, well, we could do that. And by the time I was done, that whole team had formulated a plan how to create dollar store concept at the front of a Toys R Us store. And I said, wow, you guys are fantastic. Let's do it. And everybody's happy as hell because they were part of the decision making of something that I knew was going to do anyway. But I didn't have to do it. Now they take ownership. If I walk in the room and say, listen, here's what we're doing. Oh, I don't know. You know, why do you want to do that? You know? And that's just part of how you motivate a team. And if you can appreciate, and that goes to ego, okay? I can put my ego aside. Just because I'm the boss doesn't mean that I know. Who's the worst case in the world of ego managing everything? Donald Trump, right? He can't stand it. If anybody in the world thinks he's not as smart as he, and he's an idiot. So that's just an example of, if you ever get to the opportunity to have the opportunity to lead a group of people, make them have the ideas. You don't need the accolades. You're already the boss. What are you going to do? Be a bigger boss? You know, you're already the boss. Let them have the credit. And as I've often said, if somebody screws up that's working with you, they can come into the office that day or the building or the shop to say, you know, I think I'm going to screw up today. They came in. If they screwed up, it's because they didn't know what they were doing, and that's your fault. They didn't get the instructions, right? Or they aren't a good employee. That's your fault too. You should have got rid of them. But it's not their fault. It's your fault. And you've got to take that responsibility and say, okay.
I always like the story of how you get people, how you chose hires.
Oh, yeah. Another thing I did along the way, if I was hiring, there's your VPs, directors, and managers, okay? And I needed to hire a new director. Let's say it was the director of warehouse management, okay? I would take 2 people that are VPs, 2 people that are already directors, and 2 people that are managers. And I would make them interview all the candidates. I wouldn't even interview them. I would pick them out of, you know, their resumes, but I'd sit them in with these 6 people, and I'd say, okay, you guys pick somebody. It's got to be unanimous. 5 to 1 doesn't work. It's got to be 6 of you must say that this person will be successful. And you know what? It was wonderful, because I didn't pick it. If I pick that guy or lady, the other ones are like, oh, why do you pick her? You know, yeah. But if they pick it, they are forced to make this person successful because they picked him. And they're all reporting to me, and I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, you guys picked this person. Why isn't that person performing? Well, you know, well, then you better help her because you picked her. You said that person was going to be great. It's a simple thing, but why would I have to pick that person? I'd still have to approve it. And, you know, if they had a historic criminal record, I might have to, you know. Although I got to tell you a quick story. Young people that drive the Red Bull trucks. And so we had all these applications, and we had 24 guys that applied and one young lady that applied, and that were our finalists. So when we did background checks on all of them, unfortunately one of them had a criminal record, and it was the young lady. And so we interviewed her and said, well, what happened? She said, well, you know, I was in this bar and we were having a good time, and this guy did some inappropriate things and I hit him. And I got charged because I hit him a few times. She was tough, and we hired her. We thought, well, that's great, you know. So not always do you have to reject the. And I'll tell you another, to your point. We visited a whole bunch of Red Bull dealers across the United States because there weren't any in Canada. And the guy in Chicago was one of the best Red Bull dealers in all of America. He hired only ex-cons. Why? He said, well, first you got to make sure you hire the right ex-con. He said, but these guys need a break. And if you give them a break and you treat them fairly like human beings, they'll be loyal to you forever. He said, and I've never had a problem with any of them. And so he had all these ex-cons driving his trucks, delivering product, and nobody messed with them. You know, it was great. All right. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. No questions?
Last time you did some public speaking.
Last year here.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then Beek told us a story about how you're gonna buy any stocks, and you bought them all instead of him. Do you have any? What's your side of the story on that?
Citibank. Remember Citibank?
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't even know if you remember that or not.
Yeah, well, I paid him back.
Yeah, that was the down payment for my house.
Hey, good question. Yeah.
Hey, you know, you should tell that story. It's not all sunshine and roses. You should tell that story though during that time when you weren't able to pay some of the people that were supplying the stores. You came to work one morning. There was some unexpected guests.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough time. I had people, a company called Tysil in Montreal that makes Christmas wrapping and so on. He called me I knew him, and he called me on the phone. He said, and I was living in Winnipeg at the time, and he called me, and I knew who he was, and he said, Van Beek, are you going to pay me? And I said, well, I can't. I'd like to, you know, but he says to me, if you don't pay me by next weekend, he said, you should never start your own car again. So that was scary. And then one other day, I come in the office, and we had a security guard. You could only come in one door. We had a security guard, and I came in. It was about 7 in the morning. And I go up to my office, and there's a guy sitting in my office. And he's all disheveled looking, and he's looking kind of weird, and he's a guy that we owe money to. And he's a paintbrush company from the Maritimes. And he's going crazy, and I'm scared because I don't know what he's going to do, and how did he get in here in the first place, because we have security guards. So it was a scary time. Not everything was good.
Another thing I think you should point out, I mean, although these students were prepared for today, they're not always, but I think that it's worth mentioning your work ethic, which you haven't really mentioned. It's implied from the type of work you've done, but I think that you should mention how hard you've worked, always.
Yeah, I have a work ethic because we were immigrants, and we came to this Canada, we had nothing to Canada, and we had nothing. And it's not like it is today, where if you're an immigrant, you know, you get housing, you get assistance, you get this, you get that. You got nothing. You didn't work, you didn't eat. And we came to this country, we had nothing. And so you were forced to work. I started working as soon as we got here. I was 12 years old and never really quit. But that's not a bad thing, you know. And a lot of my success, I think, was I just worked harder than other people. I worked at figuring it out. I worked at what made other people successful. You know, at Zellers, I would say, you know, I'm doing this, but I'm just as good as those guys, and that high school counselor said I was kind of dumb, but I figure I'm just as good as those guys. So what's making that guy 2 levels up successful? Why is he successful? And I'd look at him. How does he dress? What does he do? How does he think? What does he act? You know, how does he treat people? I'd look at that and say, okay, so, well, that's what makes you successful. Okay, I can do that. You know, it wasn't natural to me, but I can do that. And because as an immigrant, not speaking English, I was shy, and I got beat up as a kid by the Canadian kids because I didn't speak English, and I looked a little weird. But you just work your way through it, and you work harder than anybody else, and you get there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, I have many, so I'm going to try and narrow it down just a couple. But I'm interested about your work with Toys R Us.
Yeah.
And you said that, you know, there was the American and the Canadian, and that you didn't really want to work with the American Toys R Us because they didn't want to change. What was it that you saw that you thought they needed to change and they didn't want to change? If you, I mean,
Well,
there's several things,
yeah,
but if you
no,
kind of
it's not a. So what happens is, so Toys R Us gets started way back in the 50s by a man named Charles Lazarus, really bright guy, and in the evolution they start building 40,000 square foot toy stores, and they own the market. They were the first big box retailer that did really great, and they did great all the way through to about 1985. Stocks, people made millions. Everybody that worked there made a lot of money on stocks and options. And what happened was, over time, Walmart got in the business, Target stores, and in Canada, Canadian Tire, Zellers, Woolco, all these, Kmart, all got in the toy business. And so the toy business had a lot more competition. That was one thing. The other thing that happened in the 90s, electronics became toys. And so if you think back to 1990, which is before most of you were born, you could give a 12-year-old girl a Barbie doll. You can't give a 12-year-old girl a Barbie doll today. She's going to laugh at you because you might be able to get by with an 8-year-old today, but not a 12-year-old. And so electronics became very important. Toys R Us didn't want to get into the electronics business because there's no margin, there's no profit margin, very small profit margin. They didn't want to do that. So if you remember the Toys R Us stores of old, even when you were kids, they had these glass cases with everything locked, and you had to get a key, and they give you a tag, and then you have to go to the front and you give them the tag, and then you could look at what you're trying to buy. It was stupid. So that was another thing. Then they had approximately 40,000 different items in a Toys R Us store. And so it was just too big, and it wasn't customer friendly. Women hated going to Toys R Us, against all popular belief. Because if you have a child in a cart and you went to Toys R Us, it was a nightmare. The merchandise was probably 12 feet high. You were afraid it was going to fall on your head. There was nothing for the kids to do. The kids would scream, I want this, I want that, I want that, and the mom is trying to get the cart through there. So it wasn't a nice shopping experience for people. So when we were hired, the other guy and I, to change all of that, what we did was, first we put in electronics shops. We created shop within shop. So there would be a Lego shop, and you could go in there and play with the Lego. There would be a Barbie area, and girls could and boys could go in there and play with the dolls. And we segregated the baby stuff because, you know, they would have baby stuff next to bicycles, so you got teenagers screaming and yelling at bicycles, and this mom trying to buy diapers right next to it. It didn't work. So we made the stores smaller, and historically, if you're going to, say, a Toys R Us store, you could buy 50 different kinds of Barbies, okay? Walmart only had 12. But they had the 12 that were the most popular, and they were cheaper. And so if you're a mom, and you're in Walmart anyway, the average North American woman goes into a Walmart once every 10 days. So if you're in Walmart anyway, and your daughter is having a birthday party, and she wants a Barbie doll to give as a present, why would you leave Walmart and go to Toys R Us and pay more when Walmart's already got it? And so that's the history of the problems around Toys R Us, and they never wanted to change that. They thought it was all good. The other thing that changed dramatically, back in the 80s and 90s when a kid's movie came out, like the first Star Wars, that would be popular for 2-3 months. And we'd buy all this merchandise, and if it sold, you could get more. And because the movie merchandise sells. Well, as time goes by, a movie today is popular for about a week, you know. Then there's something else. There's a video game and there's whatever. Well, if you're a toy retailer, when a new movie comes out, a Shrek or whatever, at Toys R Us, where we did about $8 billion, you might buy $300 million worth of that toy. Well, if the movie flops, you're sitting there with $300 million worth of stuff. And if the movie is a hit, you don't have enough because it's all sold out. And so, you know, the whole industry has changed.
Yeah. Too specialized, I guess. They were
Yeah, right. Well, and then of course online buying came in too.
But didn't Toys R Us really go out of business because they didn't want to make those changes because of stock?
Well, some of it, but another thing that happens is Toys owned all the buildings, okay? So they would have this beautiful building somewhere in a town, mostly in the United States. Canada was a little different. But what happens is the center of retail changes. If you think about St. John even, you know, there was a mall over by the racetrack that was kind of the big deal for a long time. Well, it isn't anymore. So what happens is if you own the building, and that's where your toy store is, but the center of retail changes to somewhere else, you can't really just leave your building behind. Nobody wants it. It's not in the center of retail anymore. So you keep your store there, but it keeps doing less business all the time because the center of retail has moved. So there's a big advantage to owning your real estate, but there's also a big disadvantages way down the road. All right.
Any more questions?
Go do your stuff then.
Questions you can't even think of them?
I'll be here for a while. If you want to talk about your project, I'd be happy to help you.